Hey, what's up guys? It's Adam from Lazy Guy DIY, and today I'm going to show you how to take a walnut cookie like this and turn into something beautiful like this. This special little side table here is made of walnut and maple. What's really special about this here is the cookie for the top for the walnut is actually from a tree that was behind my dad's office growing up. The office was built in the late 1700s, so there's no way this tree was that old, but the tree was at least 150 to 100 years old, so I'm really excited to use this and have something that kind of brings that memory along with me when the tree had to come down. So I'm going to show you how I made this thing.
First thing we need to do here is talk about the wood cookie. So you have all the bark on here, and you cannot leave it on because it's just going to dry and fall off at some point and just make a mess. You can seal it. It's just a pain. Don't do it. So you want to clean it up. I used the hatchet here to try. It was okay. I've used a screwdriver. I've used sanders. I've done all kinds of stuff, and it just doesn't work that great. What you can use, though, is a draw knife. I'm going to draw here, but I'm going to push it here in a second just so you get a better view of it. But it just takes off the bark beautifully. I'll link it here in the profile so you know where I got mine. But it just cleans up things so well. And you don't have to get it perfect either. So the next issue with these cookies, because I cut them with a chainsaw, is it was not level. So I used my router sled here. This is something I have linked. I can put it in the notes as well. And it just makes short work. If you're doing cutting boards, if you're doing slabs, doesn't matter. Just do some passes here, and it makes it nice and level if you do both sides. But you do have all those router marks, and they are a pain to clean up. So I use a sander here, and it took quite a while with this sander, but as you see, I did a little grain pop here just to see what it looked like, and it turned out beautifully. So to clean up the sides, I'm using the spindle sander or the belt sander portion of it here, and cleans up pretty easily. But what I did get to try here is I got a new sander from Mirka. It is amazing. So I wish I had this early on when I first started sanding, but the cleanup is awesome. On to the build though. For the legs, I had this little bit of maple left over from a project that I did a while back, and it's a beautiful piece with ambrosia there. So what I wanted to do was just kind of square this up, make everything look pretty good, and then I'm going to cut strips here that are about 1/2 inch. So these are going to go in between, laminated in between the walnut, because I had quite a bit more walnut here. It's a good problem to have. So you can see here, squaring up, cutting these 1/2 inch pieces, and then I'm just going to put them in between. So next what I'm going to do is clean up the walnut on here as well after I finish cutting this, the longest cut in the world on this maple. Go, go, go. So here's some of this walnut. I was fortunate enough to get a bunch of walnut that I found in a barn that's been there for like 70 years. So I've just been continuously building things out of walnut, which also is just a great problem to have. So before we laminate here, fill a little glue using some Tight Bond here, and using a glue roller for the first time. Not sure why I haven't used it before. So they don't have to be the same size pieces here. You'll see why here in a second. So I just kind of sandwich them in between, roll in some more glue, and then I'm going to clamp the heck out of these things. But because the pieces of walnut were not quite perfect, you can see here it does look sort of like a sandwich. I'll show you in just a second after we're done clamping up here. You see there's kind of an ice cream sandwich effect here, and that's okay. Once the glue dries, we're going to run it through the router table here. And as you see, this bit, compression bit, is amazing. It'll cut pretty much anything here. So we're going to get it set up. We got it to the right height, and then we're going to pass it through. As you can see, I'm using the collet there to hit that middle piece of maple and just cleaning up these strips. It worked beautifully, cut through. And I'm going to cut off the ends because the pieces weren't the same length there, because I'm just using a bunch of scrap. So I'm going to cut my legs to length here and use the good portions of it. You see there's that little bit of overhang there. And this is where we're going to get our leg length. So I need 4 of these guys. So one more cut here, and I think we're good to go. All right, what you don't see here is me designing my template. I'm just using a piece of MDF, and I drew it on here, but you do see me cutting it out. So I'm using my track saw to cut through here, and my table saw as well. What I really should have had is a bandsaw. I don't have one, so I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. So I had to do multiple cuts here, but you can kind of see the look here. Going with these curved legs, it's going to have 3 pieces assembled, and then I just use a jigsaw to clean this up. And then if I had anything else that just wasn't quite there, I just used my spindle sander to kind of clean up those curves. But it went pretty quickly, but I'll show you the full reveal here in just a second. And here you go, sort of a mid-century modern feel. Again, if I would have tapered the legs, it would have had more of a mid-century modern look, but that's okay. So for cutting the pieces here, I'm going to get that angle for the middle. This is going to be the middle piece that connects the two legs. I'm going to have two of these, and it's going to join in sort of a half lap. So it's going to kind of have a saddle effect here. So we're transferring these angles over. It's really good to have an angle gauge to do this. So I'm going to cut this here, and the angles are very important that you nail these. So I'm going to make this cut here on both pieces, get it right, and then I just trimmed a little excess off here. So in order to do the half lap, I used a dado stack. If you have another way of doing half laps, go for it. But I just started using dado stacks, and they are amazing. I mean, look how quickly this hogs out the material here. So I did it on the top on one piece, and then I did it on the bottom on the other. I made sure that everything fit perfectly, and I cut it a little short to begin with, and then made sure we had a tight fit. So assembly on the legs was a little bit difficult. As you see, the legs I'm going to have a little bit proud. So one of the laps is going to be facing down, the other one's going to be facing up here. But you want it to be a little bit proud, and you want your legs to be just a little bit longer. And then we'll clean up that in a little later. And then these little pieces here, they're for the curves. So they were just scrap. I try to match up the grain as best I could. When it all seals up, it's going to look a little bit better, but these kind of caused a little problems. I had to do a little bit of filling, and then I cleaned them up with the spindle sander to get the curve. So now that everything's assembled here, I just kind of made a little sled with a sheet of plywood and made sure that I cut my legs so they are the perfect length. And then as you see for the top here, I have that little excess that's hanging off, and we're going to cut that off, and then I'm going to clean up the rest here really soon. So as you see, you probably saw I cleaned up a little bit on the inside with the round over. I just used my spindle sander on that, and with a template. You can also use the router and the compression pit again, but I didn't video it. Sorry, guys. But what I'm doing here is I'm doing the round over on the outside. Make sure you don't do the top where the lap happens, and the inside as well. So I stopped just short of that. You can see here in a second, I'm going to do a little touch there, and then we'll go back and we'll do the rest of the legs. So that's just so when you assemble these together, you don't have any issues, and you don't want to round over too much on the top. I also did a round over on the wood cookie as well. Just kind of gives it a nice edge. You can sand it if you want to, or just give it the sharp edge. It's up to you. It's all part of preference. But what I love about this router table from Craig is how quickly you can change the height of things. So just with two little cranks there, we're good to go. And we're back to work again because I didn't take quite enough off. So awesome little router table here from Craig. So shout out to them. Thanks for sending that to me. So once we clean this up here, looking good. So I had a few knots that I need to fill, and so I'm using moss here. I'm using flag because it cures pretty quickly, and it's pretty easy work time. So I used a little bit of tint with black and brown, and so it turned out nice. I usually just do black with walnut, but a little brown went too. So I got it here, and then I take the bubbles out and realize that, oh, you can make fire with fire. So let's just look at my mistake here, and happy I didn't burn the house down at this point. So with that all dried, I let it dry for a day. And then back with my Merca sander here, which is an absolute beast. And look how quickly, I just did a little bit of light sanding there before, and then we'll really get into it here. And I mean, you're talking about like a minute or less, and then this will completely clean up. So a little pressure, a little sanding, and let's take a look. That epoxy is already gone at this point, which is amazing. So I did a dry fit with everything, and I need to trim a little bit more off my legs. So I taped it up here because everything was pretty at this point, and just a little bit of cut right there, and that made everything right. So now for assembly, I'm going to use dowels. I'm going to use a dowel jig here, and I mark things up. This is how we're going to attach the top and the legs here. So just do a little drill for the dowels. Very easy to do. These dowel jigs are very easy. So we have these on here. I did it on both sides. And then you put these little markers in where you did your holes. And then we'll drop these in. It'd be nice if there was 4, but that's okay. So I set my top on where I want it. I give it a little mash here. And then, as you can see, there's a tiny little mark on both sides here. And those are where I'm going to drill my next holes here. So I line everything up. It'd be nice if I could clamp it, but everything went fine. A little wiggle, but it was still fine. So using the same depth, we drilled more holes here, and then we'll insert the dowels in just a second. So let's see how it did. A little bit of shaking, that's okay. So got this here, and I ended up repeating the same thing on the other side. So I put those pegs in, put the little markers in, and then we'll see how it fits from there.
So this is either going really good or really bad. Let's see how this goes. I would call that really good.
So one of the final assembly steps is the dowels here. So I'm just going to put these in on the legs and not the top yet, because I want to be able to apply all my finish and not have the legs get in the way. So it's better to do it separately, but put these in here and then let them dry. And I did my final sanding, cleanup, and any sort of patching that I needed to. So now this thing's ready to go. I then take a tack cloth and clean up any residual dust on here. And then what I'm going to do for applying the final coat is I'm going to use Rubio Monocoat. I usually use the Pure because it really brightens things up and it looks great. But this time I'm using the Walnut, and it's actually, I wanted to see what it would do with the sapwood here. And it darkened it up a little bit because I love sapwood. I love when it's nice and bright, but this kind of brings it a little bit darker, but still has that beauty to it. So, but with Rubio, it's nice. It's honestly, it's monocoat. It's one coat. So you apply it here. It's a finish and sort of a wax hybrid. So what you do is you kind of rub it in, buff it in, let it set, and then you'll clean it off with the cloth and buff it as well. But it really made this thing look beautiful. I did the same thing with the legs here. I wish that it wasn't quite as dark on the maple, but that's okay. I'm going to finish up here, and then you can see the final look.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. A couple things I want to touch on if you're working with wood cookies here, and you can get these things anywhere because trees are always coming down, unfortunately, and there's some beautiful, beautiful hidden beauty in some of these pieces of wood. Like I said, this is from the same thing, just another piece that I cut off with a chainsaw, and it cleaned up to what that side table looked like there. So I cut it with a chainsaw. I did about 2 to 3 inches, and then most importantly, you need to let these dry out. Get a moisture meter. They're like 20 bucks at your big box store. Check it, and then set these things in a garage, in your basement. Forget about them for about 6 to 8 months, maybe even more. I had mine sitting in an empty chicken coop, and so this thing baked pretty good, and I was able to use these. So you cannot use green wood for these things because they'll split, crack, and have lots of issues. So I hope you enjoy this, guys. I am very excited with how this thing turned out right here. I think it's beautiful. Hopefully you think it's beautiful too. So make sure you hit the subscribe button right up here if you like my channel. If you don't like my channel, hit it anyway. Just turn notifications on and check out this video right here. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next time.